G'day YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be addressing a topic that's come up a couple of times recently in the comments, and that topic is utilizing the FMS Fcx24m 2-speed counter rotating transmission in an SCX24 with worm gear axles. It's a combination that I've thought about in the past, but I haven't fully explored, and that's exactly what we've got here right in front of us. So if you're interested in finding out more, stick around, it's coming right up. So why exactly would you want to run this particular combination of hybrid drivetrain? Well, if you look at the wording on FMS's website for the FCX24m Camel Trophy trucks, they say that the counter-rotating transmission effectively minimizes axle torque twist, improving off-road crawling performance. Is that true? Does it actually do that? The answer to that is yes, but under some limited circumstances. And the catch is, for the counter-rotating transmission to effectively reduce torque twist, the front and rear axles need to be fairly evenly loaded. The transmission needs to be sending equal amounts of torque to the front and rear, and under those circumstances, yes, the system absolutely does counteract torque twist. But as soon as the vehicle starts heading up an incline, all of the weight goes to the rear of the vehicle, and the front unloads, then we're still going to see torque twist that is characteristic of pretty much every shaft-driven solid axle rock crawler that's out there. And the other catch to having the transmission outputs spinning in opposite directions is we can't just go ahead and throw a set of SCX24 straight axles on the vehicle, or we would have front and rear wheels turning in opposite directions and fighting each other. In the FCX24m vehicles, it's been corrected in the ring and pinions. On this vehicle, the way that we've corrected it is by running a straight axle in the front, and out the back we've had to run a mullet setup with a portal axle, and that gives us the direction change in the portal gears themselves. So if the counter-rotating transmission can't completely eliminate torque twist, what are some of the other benefits to running this particular transmission in an SCX24? Well, I would say it's the fact that the FCX24m 2-speed transmission is probably the most compact 2-speed transmission currently available on the market. Here it's installed in the Injora Buggy. Anyone who's ever worked on one of these SCX24 Injora Buggies knows just how limited the real estate inside the truck is to be able to mount everything. The fact that we can install a brushless motor, 2-speed transmission, shift servo, and all the other stuff we need to make the truck run is pretty impressive. This truck is running the little Spectrum Firma 8 amp brushless motor. This motor is not known for making a ton of torque. In this particular application, with so much gear reduction, it feels like a really powerful motor. It's got really good slow crawl, and it makes a ton of torque down low. Another huge benefit to running this hybrid drivetrain, in my opinion, is while we get to use the 2-speed transmission, we also get full control over overdriving the front axle using existing SCX24 worm gears that a lot of us already have lying around in our toolboxes. This one's running 23% overdrive in the front, and that feels just about right for this little buggy. This setup could also be great for someone who's on a budget and doesn't want to purchase a brushless motor and brushless motor controller and wants to use their existing SCX24 brushed setup. Because this thing's got such a huge gear reduction in first gear, it means that you're going to get an epic slow crawl and fantastic amounts of control out on the rocks without having to purchase more expensive electronics. So we've covered some of the positive aspects of this Franken-Truck hybrid drivetrain setup. Now it's time to talk about some of the negative aspects, and there's a couple of them to talk about. The first one that comes to mind is the fact that we have to use a mullet setup with a portal in the back. That means that it's not going to be a great option for scale builders. Another thing that I'm not in love with is how easy it is to get hung up on the underside of this transmission when you're out in the rocks. As you can see here, I have flipped the transmission around backwards to how it would normally be installed in an FCX24m, and that's just to reduce this large stepped part of the transmission from hanging up when moving through the rocks. But it isn't perfect. You still get hung up on these exposed link mounts, and if you're invested in running this transmission on an SCX24, you would need to spend a bit of time trying to come up with a solution to smoothing out the underside of the vehicle. Another thing that isn't great is where the lower links attach onto the transmission end. It's in a completely different location to an SCX24, and that does cause some compromises in the suspension link geometry. I was able to get the suspension to cycle fairly smoothly, however I wasn't able to run high clearance links. You can see how close the rear links run to each other there, and when I had high clearance links installed on the back, the links would just bind up and really limit suspension movement. So I ended up running straight links front and rear. It's not a perfect setup by any means, but even with those compromises in suspension geometry, I was able to get the vehicle driving and articulating fairly well. In the rear suspension, I've used stock length JLU or C10 links, and up front, I've raided my parts bin and found some tubing lengths that were already cut for previous projects, and I've just mixed and matched a couple of different lengths until I got the pinion angle that I needed. So I'm not sure what SCX24 those links are closest to. It just kind of ended up a little bit of a custom setup. But the Injora buggy is normally built on a JLU or C10 link setup, and the effect with my custom links in the front is that the front axle is pushed out and it's got about 143mm wheelbase. Going back through my notes, that covers all the aspects of this drivetrain setup that I wanted to talk about. I know I didn't do a full deep dive and list all the different components used in this build here. I wanted this video more to focus on the combination of the FCX24m Counter Rotating Transmission when used together with SCX24 Worm Gear Axles to answer questions for both myself and anyone else out there who had been thinking about this combination and what the results might be. That's where we're going to wrap things up for today, guys. If you got any value out of today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you've got any questions or comments about this particular drivetrain setup, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments section down below. I'm going to finish out by playing some running footage of this truck out on the backyard rock course for anybody who's interested in seeing this little beast in action. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.